Singapore is smaller than New York City. You could fit the entire country inside Lake Michigan and still have room to spare. It has no oil fields, no farmland worth mentioning, and it has to import almost every drop of fresh water it drinks. And yet, this single island city-state operates the second busiest container port on the planet, handling over 39 million containers a year. Nearly a third of the world's shipping containers pass through the Strait of Malacca right next to it, carrying an estimated $3.5 trillion worth of trade annually. Singapore alone accounts for around 20% of the entire global market for ship bunkering, refueling, making it the single largest bunkering port on Earth. So here's the paradox. A country with zero natural resources, barely any land, and a population smaller than a mid-sized American city has somehow made itself into one of the most irreplaceable nodes in the entire architecture of global trade. If Singapore stopped functioning for even a week, container ships from Rotterdam to Los Angeles would feel it within days. So how did a country with almost nothing on land come to control so much of what moves at sea? The answer starts with a single, brutal fact of geography. Nearly all shipping traffic moving between the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, oil from the Middle East, electronics from China, everything flowing between Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and East Asia, has to funnel through one narrow channel. The Strait of Malacca, at its tightest point, is barely 1.7 miles wide. There is no serious alternative route. Going around Indonesia entirely adds thousands of miles and days of fuel costs that make it economically irrational for almost any operator. And sitting right at the eastern mouth of that funnel, exactly where ships need a place to refuel, resupply, and transfer cargo, is a small island with a naturally deep harbor and almost no tidal range. When Singapore became independent in 1965, it had almost nothing to work with. No hinterland of factories, no natural resources to export, and a hostile relationship with its much larger neighbor, Malaysia, that it had just split from. Founding leader Lee Kuan Yew looked at a map and reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Singapore couldn't survive by making things. It had to survive by moving things. So instead of building factories, Singapore built infrastructure. It dredged deeper harbors, built container terminals years before most of Asia understood what a shipping container even was, and declared itself a free port with minimal tariffs on goods simply passing through. The strategy wasn't to produce and sell. It was to become the place everyone had to stop at anyway, and make stopping as fast, cheap, and easy as physically possible. Geography gave Singapore the location. Policy turned that location into a monopoly on convenience.
Here's the business model in plain terms. Singapore operates primarily as a transshipment hub. That means most cargo arriving at its port isn't meant for Singapore at all. It's unloaded from a massive mothership and redistributed onto smaller vessels heading to dozens of other ports across Southeast Asia. Roughly 80% of the containers that pass through Singapore never actually enter the country. They just change ships. The more DWT moving through your port, the more fees, storage, and services you can charge for. Singapore optimized every part of its harbor specifically to process the highest possible tonnage in the shortest possible time, because in shipping, time tied up in port is money burned. Roughly half of all ships crossing the strait stop specifically to refuel here because Singapore offers competitive fuel pricing, minimal regulatory friction, and round-the-clock service. It sells over 50 million tons of marine fuel a year, more than any other port on the planet. And then Singapore layered finance on top of logistics. Combined with its use of flags of convenience, allowing foreign-owned ships to register under Singaporean or other favorable jurisdictions for lower taxes and lighter labor regulation, the country built an entire financial ecosystem around ships that may never even touch its docks physically. The final piece was counter-cyclical investment. During the 1997 Asian financial crisis, and again during the 2008 global recession, when regional competitors froze spending, Singapore's sovereign wealth funds kept investing in port automation and expansion. By the time trade volumes recovered, Singapore's capacity had already grown to absorb it, the same pattern of buying strength during weakness that built shipping empires elsewhere. The result today is Tuas Port, a fully automated mega-terminal designed to eventually handle 65 million containers a year, all controlled with minimal human labor, guaranteeing Singapore's efficiency advantage for decades to come. But this concentration of power is also Singapore's greatest vulnerability. Because so much of world trade funnels through one narrow strait, any disruption there sends shockwaves through the global economy instantly. Piracy incidents in the strait have risen in recent years. Rising tensions in the South China Sea threaten alternative routing. And a serious military conflict involving Taiwan or the Korean Peninsula would immediately reroute enormous volumes of trade through this exact choke point. China poses the most direct long-term challenge. Through its Belt and Road Initiative, Beijing has funded and built rival ports across the region, in Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan, explicitly designed to reduce dependency on choke points Singapore controls. China has also proposed and studied alternative land corridors, like the Kra Canal through Thailand, that could theoretically bypass the Strait of Malacca entirely. Meanwhile, climate disruption elsewhere is proving just how fragile these choke points really are. Droughts crippling the Panama Canal in 2023 and 2024 forced global shippers to reroute entire trade lanes overnight, a preview of what happens when a single geographic bottleneck fails. But the world's largest economies, the United States, China, the EU, all quietly understand that a huge percentage of their supply chains rest on the stability of one small island they don't control. Globalization looks like a story about giant economies: America, China, the EU. Singapore didn't win by being big. It won by making itself impossible to route around. If you enjoyed this breakdown of how geography quietly runs the world economy, subscribe for more videos just like this. I'll see you in the next one.